What's going on, everybody? Uh, Geek here with it's not really a reaction video. I'm not big on reaction videos, but I was um doing the scroll through on my YouTube subscription list this morning and caught a video from Destin who was reacting to a video from Linus Tech Tips. Now I don't follow Linus Tech Tips anymore. They used to be pretty good in my book, but I stopped following them. There were better sources like Gamers Nexus, Bearded Hardware, and a few others, right? People in Igor's lab that dug into things like that I like a lot more from a very technical standpoint without the gimmicks. And then it's no secret, I'm not a big reaction, so I'm not going to play Destin's video here, but I will link it below because it is worth watching. His coverage of the Microsoft Activision FTC stuff was pretty well done. He's done other coverage as well. So if you want, give him a follow. It's worth it. If you're into that type of news and information, Destin's pretty good read that way. Anyways, so what that inspired me to do is, not that people care because I might be called a boomer. I don't really care. I wanted to comment on it because it got me thinking, because I've talked about it many times, that let's face it, gaming in many aspects is on a decline, and it's not a good thing, right? You can go to Google, you can search in what is killing the gaming industry, what's causing the decline, whatever terms you use. And the first couple of things that are going to come up are going to be, no matter what you do, is going to be microtransactions and the quality of the game, right? There's a few more contributing factors, and they try to put it on the community and stuff like that. To a degree, I agree. In some communities, yes, because we just keep paying for the BS, and then they keep shoveling the BS to us. Garbage in is garbage out, right? But I digress on that one. So we'll start first with microtransactions, work down through it. I have a list of a little thing here. I made a notebook of notes that I want to talk through. So we'll talk with microtransactions. In my house, I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. My wife plays, she plays mobile games, not really much of anything. And then there's myself, who's a diehard gamer. I grew up gaming. Okay, I grew up when it was tabletop and dice and cards, and then the computer came out. Yes, I'm well leveled up, and start with the Tandy 1000. I had a Packard Bell. I had an Atari 2600. I had basically every console from Nintendo growing up throughout the years. So I've seen the evolution of gaming. And when they first came out, there wasn't all these social media platforms or YouTube to bash the game or anything like that. It was like, whoa, yeah. And if there was bugs, there were bugs, because we had dial-up. We didn't have broadband or anything like that. That all came later on as technology and communications evolved. But we didn't have microtransactions either. Developers knew when they released a game, the developers in the studios released that game, or the publisher, it had to be ready to go. It had to work, and it had to work on the intended platforms. Otherwise, games would be returned and money would be lost. It was that simple. You had a refund that was involved. If the disc didn't work, I brought it back, usually GameStop or something like that. And that's all there was to it. But nowadays, it doesn't matter the game. I played Destiny when Destiny 1 launched, right? And I carried through because I really enjoyed the game. I really liked what they were trying to do at the time, which was merging a first-person shooter with an MMO. I think they've kind of failed at that attempt, and they've moved away with it as their greed has become more and more apparent. I fell out of the love with Destiny 2 at Lightfall. I was already in a love-hate relationship before Lightfall. As the quality of the game shifted, and the lack of respect for the game consumer itself became apparent, specifically when I first bought Destiny 2, we bought the game. It was a digital copy, but we owned something of the game. And then over the years, it changed in the terms of service and the limited licensing agreement that we now, while we have to pay for the game, we no longer own the game. We're leasing the game. and they have limited liability to the impact that or the damage that their system can cause. So not only do we have to pay to play the game, if we want to play all the content, you have to pay. It's not free, they say, and there was some stupid article out there from, I think it was PC Gamer the other week, where they're talking about community. There's plenty of stuff to play and they're free to play. I have an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. They try to play with me. They can't play. I've watched CB Gray do a really fantastic marathon. We went after all of the exotics, the amount of money it took him to get that, and the amount of exotics that are locked behind paywall. It's not a free to play game. It's a free to try game. Let's not dilute that in any sense of the word. So let's stop using that. So you have to pay for the game, the base game, the expansions, the DLC, whatever. And then they have the season pass that you get certain things off of. And it's become even more of an issue now because in the season pass on the top row that you pay for, you have unlock or craft modules. I don't know what they're called to give you all this stuff. So you're getting microtransactions. And I'm just using Destiny as an example here. So it's become more and more about how much money can I get. And then it doesn't stop there because they're giving you transmogs and shaders and stuff for 10 to 12 to 15, 20 bucks. That's nuts. Why? It's nothing new. They're using the computer generate, just dropping a couple different colors and life is good. I don't understand why you're paying 10 bucks for a stupid shader. That's why I uninstalled the game. Anyways. So there's microtransactions, and you look at games like Genshin Impact. It's not allowed in my house because not only is it heavily laden with microtransactions, it's more of a gotcha system, which is what the game is called. You have no idea what you're getting for your money. You just got to toss the dice and go with it. You've got FIFA Sports and all that stuff with the loot chests and whatnot. So they take whatever they can to make the money. And so I think when we say this, I think people are just at a point where enough is enough. They're just like, I can't take any more of this. And you look and you say, I found is very interesting from the gamer that put up the survey. The amount of money that people are willing to spend on games, or they do spend on games, right? And I had to think about this as a boomer. I've spent a little bit of money. This has to include at some point, right? PC hardware, console hardware, or something. I might spend a couple $100 a year on games. Definitely not 600. But if there's more people out there that are paying more, that might explain where that figure is coming from. Are those people paying for transactions? And as you can see, as you work up to the younger generation here, they're spending more and more. That's 21,000, almost 25. 21,500 more than the boomer. And this I'm going to put on the parent, because a lot of times the parents just say, hey, okay, kids, here's a game, here's a tablet, go play. It's going to be your babysitter for the day. If you're a parent and you do that, you need to reevaluate your priorities, because I think that's just bad parenting. There are a lot more things that kids need to develop, and they need social interactions and guidance and all that other stuff across the board. So please, don't let games and tablets and internet raise your kids. Do something more with them. So I found this very interesting. And then you can come here and you can look at the Bank My Cell. It's just one of many. And I just chose this one. What the gaming industry is worth to show this one. In 2023, this year, they're estimated valued by the end of the year of $221.4 billion, not million, $1 billion. And by the year of 2023, that's going to more than double, almost triple. Look at that, $583 billion by 2023. How much of that is going to come from microtransactions, gotcha systems, and nickeling and diming the crap out of somebody? Just asking, how many of you think that number, that $583 billion, almost triple, 2.5 times, a little more than that, in just 7 years, as more and more companies adopt the same games as a service thing that Bungie and Sony are pushing out, this garbage crap. But as a consumer, they're only worth this much because of all of us. This is how much we are spending, giving that value to it, right? 3.26 billion people playing games, estimated 3.8 billion by 2027, 49% global revenue, okay, in Asia Pacific. You've got to look at how they're targeting that, right? Is that and because of all those trends, it gets me worked up every time because my kids are going to have to deal with this. I'm going to have to deal with this as I get older because I want to keep gaming. Gaming is one of the things that I do to get away from reality. I don't want games to preach politics to me. I don't want it to treat news, anything. I want to come home and I want to unplug from reality and escape into a game because a lot of the reality around us is just, it's a crapshoot right now. There's so much stuff. It's just, I want to be able to unplug, but we're not able to do that so much. So what is killing the gaming is microtransactions. And then that leads to the next one, which is the decline in quality. Well, if they're charging more for it, there was the thing that's the Bungie again put out at a developer conference. I'll have to find the link, put down for a presentation where they said, you're not going to make everyone happy all the time, which is true. We don't care if we deliver, though, but they went into to highlight and said they don't have to deliver a great product. It doesn't have to be bug free because people are still going to pay for it. Give them a little bit of what they want, maybe 10% at most or less. And then we'll bring something later or we'll do something later, so it's like a roller coaster with them. But a lot of people are getting really burnt out on that model as it's being adopted. Because let's face facts, the reason that Sony bought Bungie was not for Destiny 2. We all know Destiny 2 is on a downhill. They bought Bungie because of their model with the games as a service, and they want to apply that elsewhere. You can go do some Googling and see where it's coming up. There's a lot of articles on it. I don't want to spend a whole lot of time there. But because of that mentality, we're getting a ton of games now that are being delivered as finished product that if this was in a business world, the vendor would be fired. I would fire if I was a business, a parent company, and I said, hey, I had software vendor XY come into the office and say, here you go, and it's full of bugs. I would fire them, get my money back, and go to the next one. That's how it would work. But because as a consumer, we're a single person, we don't have a lot of authority on that one. We don't even get a lot of refund capabilities anymore. We don't even get honored that way anymore. They're like, oh, tough crap. You bought the game as is, you knew it. And so a lot of games are now pushing themselves as games as a service and games as is, which is a horrible combination. But you get in there and you see the quality of the game. And I'm just going to name off over the years, Amazon New World and Cyberpunk 2077. Really bad games, badly tested, neglected on PC front, destroying GPUs. And then you have other ones like that released this year, like Forspoken. Not a great game to begin with. I tried playing it and no thanks. Just don't even bother. Unless it's on super sale or something, you get it for $5, maybe. It's got problems. It's stability issues, graphic issues, rendering issues. Not great. Wild Hearts had issues. Hogwarts had some issues. I played the game. I loved Hogwarts. It did have a couple technical issues, so it wasn't perfect at launch. Wulong had some issues. Last of Us just goes to show, not perfect, had problems. Jedi Survivor was a crap show with all sorts of performance issues, graphic issues, stutters, and some other things. Redfall was another one. So I'm not going to pull my punches at any of the platforms. Microsoft, Xbox, PlayStation, PC, whatever. They've all got games that have problems, issues, and all that stuff. So you have poor testing, and they don't care if it's poor or not. You bought the game, they're happy, they got the sales numbers, things are great, hunky-dory. And again, I'll go back and I'll reference terms of service and limited liability and limited licensing agreements and stuff. A lot of them now where you used to log in, you get the ownership. We don't have a right as a consumer. We log into the game. If we want to play the game that we've put a couple hundred hours into and we don't say yes, we don't get to play. So yeah, a lot of times people click on the yes and I accept the updates. And those terms of services evolve because the game studio and developer and publisher can change that anytime they want to for their benefit and tell us to pee off, right? And that's what happens a lot. A lot of these ones now, they're even put in their terms of service that they're only liable if their hardware is damaged. They're only liable for the cost of the game, not the cost of the hardware. So you have to prove that it was the game that caused your hardware to go down, and you're only going to get a fraction of that because they're going to say, well, the hardware was old already. Depreciation and all that stuff. So it's a tricky slope on that one. So they have poor testing, lack of care. They don't care about the consumer. And unfortunately, as we come back to here and we see people are spending the money, they're spending all that money. on games every year, microtransactions and stuff. As long as they're making money, they don't care. And individually, if we say, well, I'm just not going to play the game, I'm not going to spend that money, we don't make enough of an impact for them to fill the bottom dollar. So we kind of get crapped on. There has to be something that happens. And unfortunately, what's going to happen, because we don't have any rights to the game, again, like World of Warcraft, Destiny 2, all these games like that, you pay, right? You could even have a monthly subscription, but you don't own your character. You don't own the gear. You have the right to play the game, and you don't even own the software. You lease it to be able to play it. Okay, just keep that in mind. So they can ban you, and if they find a pattern, they can adapt the terms of service, ironically, change that, update it, and then hit you with that later. So if it's some of the stuff they do is sneaky, but you don't own anything. So you could have put 400 hours and you could have put 4,000 hours into a game. You have leased the game. You don't own your character. You don't own the gear. You don't own any of the accomplishments or anything that you've done on that game. You've just played the game. So you're getting hit with microtransaction, game expenses, all these things, but you don't have any ownership other than you get to play the game. It's not your game. And that's something that has to be addressed. And at some point, I think, with everything that went on with the FTC, Activision, Blizzard, Sony, with the U.S. government, U.S. Congress calling out Sony, working with the Japanese government now for anti-competitive tactics, abusing the Fair Trade Act. You're going to get a lot more stuff and a lot more scrutiny going on in the game industry. And I'm glad that Sony's getting reviewed for this because, again, I'm going back to why Sony bought Bungie, hypothetically here. I don't want to get in trouble. Or, in my opinion, whatever terminology you want to use, to get games as a service model and get that being applied to more and more of their games. Go look it up. Go Google Sony games as a service model from Bungie. You're going to see some interesting topics and articles. You may or may not disagree with them. But all of that is going to lead to something that a lot of us probably won't appreciate. Or we may, because it might be the only way to temper game developers and studios from slapping us in the face with all these microtransactions and pathetically bad beta released quality games. And that's going to be the government getting involved like they did in football and sports. Even recently, what was it? Late last year, earlier this year, Taylor Swift concerts and stuff. They're now involved in regulating ticket sales even more. So are they going to get now involved inside of game sales, game rights, game regulations? Will that cause a fee? Probably. An additional fee to the gaming purchases or anything like that? Probably. And as a consumer, we're going to eat it. But that's because we have so many of the consumers out there that are playing the games, or bad parents that just let their kids do it, or parents that don't know it. And this is really bad parenting. For those parents that have kids that sneak around, grab a credit card or something like that, and go in and pay a bunch of microtransactions or in-game fees, costing the families hundreds of thousands of dollars, or hundreds to thousands, not hundreds of thousands. There might be one or two. I can think of a couple articles where Diablo Immortal. There was a kid in Fortnite that spent a couple $1,000s of his parents' money. All this stuff making it hard to pay. And that's both on the game itself and on the parent for not being better about protecting their finances or keeping minors from being able to play those games. But there's relatively no control on that one. So I think as a result of this, we're just going to see a lot of changes that may negatively impact how we interface or be able to get games in the future. Not to mention the anti-cheat stuff, which could be a whole different video on how intrusive it is, because as soon as you boot up, most of the time, it's looking at everything you've got, which I think is asinine. But let me know in the comments below what you guys and everybody think of what gaming is turning into. If you think it's getting too ridiculous, paid for games coming and releasing as beta games, even though they say they're production, people justifying that, people justifying all the microtransactions. Now, game developers, I give it to them. They got to make money. That's what they're there for. They want to make the money. But is there a moral high ground, or where's the line? Where do you draw the line for how much you milk your consumers before it's just going to cause so much content that I'm just blown away? I'm still blown away by the survey. I've looked it up. We live to be about 80 years old. How much have I spent on games since I graduated high school? Okay, I'm going to call it from high school because before then it was my parents' money. I could say probably 20 grand, and that's not including my computers, but I can use my computers for multiple things. I don't just game on them. So somewhere between 20 and 25 grand. I've been gaming since 1994. Okay. That's being a consumer since 1994. Before that was my parents' money, right? Maybe my paper route money, but which wasn't a ton. But more and more people spending more and more money. I'm not getting it. I'm not getting it. But you can see here the millennials, we're spending a little bit more than Gen Z. Maybe they're starting to get burnt out on that one, just possibly. So it'd be interesting to see if this continues down to support this article, number of gamers growing to go 2.5 times. I'm really interested in you guys' thoughts. Everyone, let me know in the comments below. What do you expect from a game? What do you don't expect from a game? What are you okay with in a game? Just overall, what direction do you think is going to take place over the next couple of years? Anyways, stay safe out there. It's summertime. I live in Texas. It's freaking hotter than crap. So stay cool, have fun, and happy gaming, and take care of your families.